Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Northwood Community Church. We are glad y'all chose to spend your Sunday with us. Whether you're here or joining us online, if you're out there online, we just want to say a special hello to you. Thanks for joining us this morning. Wherever you are this morning, let us encourage you and invite you to stand with us. We're going to start together with some worship music.
Series called Breakout, where we're going to look at what it looks like for God to deliver us from some things that we need to break out from, whether that's fear, whether that's anxiety, whether that's depression, whether that's a sickness, cancer, whatever that may be, whatever that is that's plaguing you in your life, bitterness, control, whatever that is. We're going to be looking at the next few weeks how we can begin to trust God in those things and begin praying for a breakout in those moments, for God to come in and do what only He can do and provide that breakthrough miracle power. And the awesome thing is we're going to sing about in these songs some stories from Scripture where God showed up and did some amazing, powerful things. And the cool thing about that is the same God that did all those things is the same God that's alive today and that we worship today. So we just encourage you. This is a new song. If you know it, we encourage you to sing along as soon as you catch along with us and worship with us. But maybe it's an opportunity just to listen and let those thoughts sink in and let these words sink in and see and be praying about maybe what that area is in your life that you need God to make a breakthrough.
cross stands before me. It is finished, it is done. Yeah, I heard you told death it was over. So in your name, I'll claim this fight is won.
Amen. Y'all can have a seat.
Good morning. Welcome to Northridge. Thank you so much for choosing to spend your Sunday with us. If you're joining us online, or maybe you're visiting for the first time with us, we'd love you to fill out these connection cards. You have one in your seat. We'd really love to get an email address from you so we can send you some information about the church, as well as maybe pray for any prayer requests that you have. So just fill us out some special information that you're comfortable with, and we'd love to connect with you. So we're coming off a great week. Last Sunday was Easter. We had a great time celebrating Easter, and we had the most people at our campus that we've ever had last week. So, it's not about numbers for us, but each one of those numbers represents the potential for life change. So that is huge. So as well as these connection cards for your email address, we are starting a new series called Breakout. And so we have that Breakout poster back there on the wall that we would love for you to fill out without your name. Something that you would need God to give you a breakthrough or breakout in or from. Just anything from anxiety, fear, depression, greed, just anything that you're struggling with. Wrap those on that card, and we'll be putting those up on that board without your name, so that we can pray over those throughout this series. So make sure you get your connection card, fill that out, and just drop those in the giving boxes on the way out. Those are the black boxes on the wall. There's one in here, and then there's one on in the hallway. You can also give any giving contribution that you'd like to do if that's one of the ways that you worship. We also have volunteer sign-up cards on the information desk. We have lots of areas in the church that you can serve, that we need people to serve. Children's ministry, First Impressions, worship. If there's something that you're gifted in, I encourage you to pray over ways that God can use you in those areas. Grab one of those cards off the information desk, fill that out, drop those in those black boxes as well. We would love to have you serve with us. So Jim is going to be giving the message today on our new series, Breakout, and I'm going to pray for us. God, thank you so much for the opportunity to come and listen to your word. And just thank you that we have the ability to come and just worship you and spend time dedicated to living more in your will. And I just pray that you would give us the ears to hear what it is you have to say to us this morning. Thank you so much for everything you do for us through the week as well as this morning. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Good morning, Erwin Kinks. How are we doing today? Good? Yeah. All right, listen. Hey, I just want to add to what Alice said. Amazing week last week. Just so thankful. I mean, you think about coming out of a pandemic and having like more people than you've ever had. And she said it's not about like the numbers. it's really about being a missional community and a missional family. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how we continue to welcome those families and welcome those individuals here as part of the family as quickly as possible, and seeing what God does in their lives and how they join in on the mission that God has here in Erwin. So I'm just really thankful to our staff and our directors and our leadership and our volunteers and any of you that have been investing in people's lives and inviting them at moments like that. Just really thankful for the amazing job that everybody's doing. So thank you. Today we are starting this new series called Breakout, and we're talking about breaking free from some of the things that typically hold us captive. And sadly, in our culture today, it feels like that it's more typical than not to be held captive to dangerous thinking or habits like worry, addiction, fear, our past, greed, debt, those kinds of things. Like it's almost the norm that all of us are like held captive by something like that. And so many things that we spend a good deal of our lives worrying about and dealing with and trying to overcome. Jesus has given us the power to conquer those things. And so it's kind of a shame that we live the way we do. It's His desire that we be free from those things so that we can make more of an impact for the community, and so that also we can be a light. You think about how rare it is to see somebody who typically should be wrapped up in worry, and they're not wrapped up in worry, but they've got peace. Like that's such a light to people around them. And so the deceiving thing about these kind of negative things that hold us captive a lot of times is they have this kind of lure that causes us to dive deeper and deeper and deeper into them, kind of almost promising that the more time we spend on them, the more we'll be able to maybe kind of gain some sense of control out of it. And yet it never works. It feels like it might do something, but it never works. And so, it's kind of like the dark side of Star Wars, in Star Wars. Like, I hope I'm not spoiling anything that you've had since 1977 to watch. Hopefully, that everybody's kind of semi up to speed on that. But in the movies, what you see is that some people begin to kind of tap into their negative emotions to gain power from the dark side, right? And so it's just like, the more you give into anger, the more power you'll have, the more control you'll have. And the interesting thing about that is as the viewer, like they kind of set it up so that you can kind of see what's going on, and you're sitting there thinking, wait, like you feel like you're gaining more control and more power, but it's gaining control and power over you. And this is not a good thing. And you're not becoming a better person as a result of it. You're becoming a worse person as a result of it. And so you kind of see that trend in those movies. And that's the way these things are that take control of us. We become addicted to things because they make us feel better, right? And in a moment where we feel like we're not having the control that we would like to be able to have, all of a sudden, like we find something that we feel like, this makes me feel better. I'm gaining some control, at least, over this situation. And we think that, that's a good thing, or at least it feels like a good thing, but it's not. It begins to control us. Same with worry, right? I mean, we feel like that, if we worry enough, we'll be able to figure out some way out of the situation. So we feel like if I could just think about this enough and worry over this enough, maybe I'll gain some control over the situation. But we don't, right? It just gets worse and worse and worse, and we kind of end up becoming paralyzed by worry. And the same is really true with this topic that we're talking about today, which is bitterness. It's very, very similar. When we get hurt, we're typically looking for some sense of control of the situation. And so we're looking for some way to kind of get the upper hand. And we kind of feel like if we continue to think about all that person has done against us or done to us, that somehow we're going to get even with them, or we're going to think of some sort of way to get even with them without appearing petty, right? Because, we don't mind being petty, but we don't want to look petty, right? So we want to make sure that we found some kind of sneaky way that people won't be able to figure out what we're doing to kind of put them down or get even with them. Or we might not necessarily be bitter just because of what some individual has done against us. We may just be becoming bitter because life has not gone like we thought it would. And negative things have happened in our lives. And a lot of times we typically direct that bitterness towards God. And maybe we don't realize it. A lot of times that still shows itself in being frustrated with everybody around us, right? Because how do you get even with God? Or, do you even want to express out loud, I'm bitter at God? And so we'll show a lot of frustration to everybody else around us. But really at the root of it is we're frustrated because we feel like God should have stepped up and done something different. in the situation, and he just didn't. And so it's easy to just develop this bitter spirit when we feel like things have not gone the way that we felt like they should have. And before long, we find that our lives are defined by bitterness. And our world, when that happens, keeps getting smaller and smaller and smaller the more that we dwell on it. And other people kind of like back away. Like, I don't know if you've noticed that, but like the more you give into bitterness, the more other people kind of start taking a step back, because it's hard just being around somebody who's negative and bitter all the time. And so we're kind of retreating into a prison of our own making without even realizing it. And a lot of times we just can't let it go. And part of it is because, doggone it, we were right. Right? So why would I let this thing go? Because I'm the person who was right in this situation. If you've ever read the book of Ruth, like her mother-in-law, Ruth's mother-in-law, is a great example of this. Like, terrible things happen in her life. Her life doesn't go like she thought it was going to go. They're going to move back to Israel, where they're from in the first place. And she's coming back, and like people are introducing themselves and getting to know her and asking her what her name is. And she literally says, I mean, at least she can admit it, right? But she says, well, why don't you just go ahead and call me, I'm so bitter, why don't you just call me Mara, which means bitterness. Like, that's positive, right? I mean, that's just like, that really attracts people to you. You're going to make a lot of new friends that way. You can imagine this morning if somebody comes in and you've never met them, you do the typical, like, hey, how long have you been coming in? Oh, actually, today's my first Sunday. Oh, what's your name? Well, I'm just so bitter all the time. I'm like, well, just go with bitterness. Why don't you just call me bitterness? Like, put that in your phone. Bitterness, and then here's my last name. And I mean, like, really? Like, listen, we need to reach out to all the hurting people, and, but let's just be honest. You got to swallow hard before you say, hey, what are you doing Tuesday? You want to come over for dinner? Bitterness, and bring your husband hate, and let's have a cookout, right? I mean, yeah, we should probably do that. They need Jesus for sure if they're introducing themselves as bitterness and hate. But it's hard. I mean, that repels people. And so, obviously nobody wants to be that person. Nobody wants to live like that. But sometimes we have a hard time seeing this trend in ourselves. And so what do you do when you begin to realize that you're beginning to have this bitter spirit? When you begin to realize that you're unhappy, you're frustrated all the time, you're blaming somebody else for things that they did or things that you wish they had done. Why didn't they step up in that moment? Didn't they notice me in that moment? And so, in that moment you can either allow what the writer of Hebrews says is a root of bitterness to begin to kind of take hold in your life, or you can begin to allow God in that situation to do something for His good, for your good, and for His glory. You can either let it make you bitter, or you can let it make you better. And so here's what the writer of Hebrews says actually in that passage. In chapter 12, starting verse 14, he says, make every effort to live in peace with everyone and to be holy. Without holiness, no one will see the Lord. See to it that no one falls short of the grace of God, and that no bitter root grows up to cause trouble and defile many. It's interesting. It says defile many. Like, you allow bitterness in your life, and it's going to spread. And especially if you're a parent in here, like, your kids are going to pick up on that. They're going to pick up on the fact that you are carrying this bitterness around with you. And it's going to mark them. And so he says, first of all, live at peace with everyone. And, I think we read that and we say, all right, man, I'll be happy to do that if they won't act like an idiot. Like, no problem. Or yeah, I'll be happy to do that if they'll apologize. If they'll just apologize, I'll be happy to live at peace with everyone. And God looks at us and says, oh, I'm sorry. Did you think I was talking to him? I'm talking to you. Like, this is your responsibility. This is what I'm putting on you. This is what I want you to do, because you're the only person that you can do anything about. And so it doesn't matter what the other person does. I'm telling you to do your part to live at peace with them. And then he says something that's really interesting. He says, don't fall short of the grace of God. And he ties this idea of bitterness with falling short of the grace of God. And that's kind of an interesting thought. Like, why is that? When you think about it, grace and bitterness are kind of polar opposites. If you're bitter, you're not really living in the grace of God, are you? You're falling short of everything that's available to you, right? You can't fully enjoy and live in the grace of God and not be showing grace to other people as well. And so those are really kind of opposites when you think about it. you're not getting everything that's available to you through the grace of God if you're allowing bitterness to take root in you. And so he says if you don't deal with it, it'll take root. And I mean, you think about that. That's such a great illustration, because we've all done this, right? We've planted something, and just think about a shrub. I mean, it's not very big. We're not talking about oak tree here. You go to the Walmart, or you go to Lowe's, or you go to a nursery somewhere, and you get maybe a gallon size. So it's just like this big is what the pot that it's in. It's a little bush on top, and you plant that, and you think, well, the roots are just like this much, like that's nothing. And so 10 years goes by, and you think, well, I don't like that shrub there. Like, I want to move it, or I'm just going to tear it out, throw it away. And so you think, well, I'm sure the roots have grown, so I'll dig maybe a foot out each way, and I'll wiggle that thing, and it'll come right out. Right? Well, listen, there's all kinds of great YouTube videos. You can entertain yourself forever, like on YouTube, looking at people who they ended up having to wrap a chain around it, and the chain came loose and shattered the back windshield of the car, or the back bumper got ripped off, because 10 years, the roots go, they have dug in and they spread out, and it's really hard to get that out if you let it continue to go on. 6 months, no problem. 10 years, huge problem. And how many months does it take for bitterness to really kind of take root? I don't know. I think it's probably quicker than 10 years, where it begins to really work into your life and becomes a huge problem and holding you back in so many ways. In Luke chapter 15, Jesus tells us 3 stories about things that are lost. And the one that we think of the most is the lost son, which we call the prodigal son. And we spend a lot of time looking at that when we look at that particular story, because it's such an amazing picture of God's grace, isn't it? I mean, that you've got this son that rejected his father, and disrespected his father, and went off and lived a sinful life, and then came to his senses and felt like, man, I don't even know if my father would even be interested in seeing me. And the father sees him coming and rushes to him and loves him and throws a party for him. And so it's just such a great picture of the fact that no matter where you've been, no matter what you've done, God's grace is always there waiting on you. It's just awesome, right? So we spend so much time thinking about that, but we miss, I think, what is probably the more relevant story for us, for most of us. If you've been in church for a little while, if you've had a relationship with Christ for quite some time, like, you had your prodigal son moment, and that was a moment. But now you're living the life of his other brother. And that's the part that I think that we miss a lot of times, the value of this story, is the older brother is that person who's been there, he's been with the father, he's completely out of touch with the prodigal son moment, and he's just judgmental, and he's harsh, and he's unforgiving. And I think that's the thing that really we can take away from this, because I think, again, this is more relevant to us on an ongoing basis. And so when the older brother hears that a party is being thrown for his wayward brother, he's pretty upset. Look what he says in Luke 15, or how this goes in Luke 15, starting verse 28. It says, the older brother became angry and he refused to go into the party. And so his father went out and pleaded with him. But he answered his father. He said, look, all these years I've been slaving for you and never disobeyed your orders. Let's listen to that phrase for a second. Something's gone wrong in your relationship with the Father when you start using terms like, I'm slaving for you and I'm obeying your orders. It's not like I'm passionate about your heart and your wishes. No, it's I'm slaving. Like, so when you start talking about serving, giving, all those kinds of things, you're saying, well, I slave for the Lord. There's a problem there. Your relationship with Christ is not where it should be if that's the lingo that you're using. And he says, you never gave me even a young goat so that I could go celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours, which, is kind of that whole passive-aggressive kind of thing, I'm not going to call him my brother, so this son of yours who has squandered your property with prostitutes comes home, you kill the fattened calf for him. And then here's what the father says, my son, you are always with me, and everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate. Listen to what he's saying. This is who we are, man. This is who our family is. This is what it means to be us. Like, we had to celebrate and be glad, because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and he's found. So this brother becomes angry because he's seen how much hurt that this younger brother caused his father. His younger brother caused him hurt as well. I'm sure that there was a lot more work to do around the farm, and every day he would get up and he would do certain things, and then he would do other things and think, I'm having to do twice as much because he's not here doing what he is supposed to do. I'm here doing what I'm supposed to do. And you can see it even cause a strain in his relationship with the father, because he began to see what he did for his dad as slaving for his dad, right? He began to develop that attitude. And he felt like he had been the one that had done what he was supposed to do. And he felt like that he had been the one that had been loyal. And he had really good reasons to be angry. And here's the thing. I'm not here to try to talk you out of the hurt or the pain that you've been through. Like, it's legit, right? Like, I'm not here to try to say things weren't fair, that weren't unfair, or they weren't hurtful. It's legitimate. Like, we get hurt many times. And just acting like those things actually didn't hurt or they're not a problem isn't going to help us with our issue with bitterness. But you can see that his bitterness is already putting him in chains. First of all, he's leaving himself out of the party. Right? There's a party going on. Just think about that. It's kind of typical when it comes to bitterness. Everybody else is kind of moving on with the party, and you're the person who's still struggling. You're the person who's still angry. You're the person who's still off to the side, missing out on everything because of your bitterness. And not only that, he now has a strained relationship with his father as well. And I love this passage because it shows that frustration with the father and with the person who's offended him. And I think a lot of times it's a mixture, right? I think it's both. A lot of times we may be offended by somebody, but we may still be looking at God going, why would you let somebody treat me like this? When I've been the one in the right, when I've done what I'm supposed to do, don't you reward what has been done right? And so I think it's realistic to look at this and see, like we have frustrations with both a lot of times when we begin to struggle with bitterness. And so he starts, first of all, how do we deal with this? He starts first by having a conversation with the father. And honestly, that's where we need to start. The conversation is not really exactly what I think it should be. I think he's, he expresses his frustration. He's honest about how he feels. And I think that part we need to take away from this. I think, that's what we need to do. But he's kind of disrespectful about it. And I've heard people say before, God's not afraid of your feelings, and God's not afraid of you being honest. And so even if it's disrespectful, just tell him what you think. And I'm like, I don't think I want to cross that line. I don't think I necessarily want to sign off on let's go be disrespectful to God because we're super upset right now. I don't think that's the way to go about it. But absolutely taking the time to just come to God and pour our hearts out and say, man, this is what I'm struggling with, and I don't understand it, and it doesn't seem right to me, and it doesn't seem just or fair. It's great to take that time to just pour our hearts out and say, God, help me understand this, help me get a different perspective, and to really pour our hearts out. I think one of the interesting things about him being disrespectful here is sometimes you kind of hit what you focus on. And so, he's focused on how disrespectful his brother has been to his father, and now he's being disrespectful to the father. And so, the very thing he's judging somebody else for, he's beginning to do now. And I think it's interesting. That's one thing that bitterness does is it takes root. Is you are so self-justifying yourself that you begin to self-justify sin in your life as well. And so, you look at the father's response. He responds to him by telling him all the things that he possesses in the Father. And I think that's the second thing, is we just really need to start focusing on all that the Father has done for us. That needs to become our focus. That needs to become, instead of just letting ourselves mentally churn all the time on the things that have been done against us, we need to be constantly focused on all that has been done for us in the Father. No matter what's been done to you, something better has been done for you. There's no question about that. Here's just some of the things that we have in our relationship with the Father. We have the assurance that we're always accepted in Christ. No matter how rejected you may feel by some people, you are accepted in God because of Jesus. That's amazing to think about. We are the children of the King. We are forgiven by God's great mercy. We have access to the throne room of God all the time. Anytime you face anything in your life, you can immediately go into the throne room of the greatest being of the universe, and you can talk. and lay that at His feet. That is absolutely unbelievable. We've been delivered from the power of darkness. We have the Holy Spirit within us so that as we yield to Him, He literally can live through us. And we have an inheritance that can never be taken away from us. That is amazing. Just to be honest, people who are living from that position would seem very, very petty, getting caught up in bitterness towards somebody, wouldn't it? It would almost be like, a billionaire just absolutely losing it and not letting it go because somebody who was a server offended them. It's just like you can eat at 20 million other places today. You can do anything you want. Like, why does this bother you? And that's the way it is. When we really look at the riches that we have in Christ, why are we spending time being so offended about certain things? Whatever has been done to you, Jesus is better than that. We need to take the time to focus on the goodness that God has shown to us. We need to take the time to count our blessings and to really understand what God has done for us and is doing for us. And so this is kind of the bottom line for today. Worship rooted in the Word is the weapon that combats woundedness. Worship that is rooted in the Word is the weapon that combats woundedness. When we get into the Word, and that's where we go, because that's what tells us the truth about who God is and who we are. We don't get to decide on our feelings who we think God is. That's idolatry. That's us making up a God that we would like, and we're very good at that in our culture and even in our churches sometimes. And so we don't get to do that. But when we look at what the Word says about who God is and what He's done for us, we will naturally worship. And the more we worship, the more we're going to understand that God is bigger than the situation that we're struggling with. Really, bitterness is just a lack of trust, right? It's a lack of trust that God is still in control no matter what other people have done to me or no matter what has happened to me. It's just a lack of trust. It's just a lack of trust that God can use even the hard things in my life to do something really better in my life. It's a lack of belief in that. And when we understand that and we focus on that, we're going to be more inclined to show that mercy and that love that God has shown to us to other people. Which brings us to this last step in breaking free from bitterness, and that's just to extend forgiveness. Now, this is the part we do not want to do. We will talk to God about it, right? We will have the conversation with God. God, this isn't right. God, this isn't fair. God, I need to pour my heart out here and let you know that I'm pretty upset with how things are going. We may not go on to the worship part and really dive into all that we have in Christ and all the riches that we have and begin to get that perspective and live from that perspective to other people. We may not do that, but this one we want to avoid like the plague. Because we don't want to go have these conversations. We don't want to go have these difficult conversations. But it's interesting. Jesus said a couple different things that seem to contradict, but they actually just kind of coordinate. He said if you've offended somebody, you go and you make it right with them. But he also says, if you are offended by somebody, you go and make it right with them. Now, which is it, Jesus? We came to you to get you to tell us who's responsible for making this thing right, and you've said yes, it's everybody's. Technically, if everybody obeys Jesus, we'll just meet in the middle. I'm so sorry for offending you. Oh, I'm here to forgive you. And so that would be awesome. But what Jesus is really saying is it's both people's responsibility. It's the offended person's responsibility and the offender, their responsibility to make the whole trip, to bridge the whole distance, to go all the way to make the connection. Listen to what Paul says here in Ephesians 4. Starting in verse 31, and of course verse 32 we all probably know fairly well, or a lot of folks do. But he says in verse 31, get rid of all bitterness, rage, anger, brawling, and slander, along with every form of malice. I don't know how many forms of malice there are, but it gets its own category, and it's got a whole bunch of, I don't know, but I guess there's a lot of ways to be malicious. But then here's what he says, be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other. Why? You forgive people because you're a stand-up person, right? You're a good person. No? You forgive people because they actually start to realize they were wrong. No, you forgive people just as in Christ God forgave you. How do you get rid of bitterness and anger and all of the maliciousness against someone? You focus on the forgiveness and the mercy that God has shown you, and you extend that to the other person. It comes back to worshiping God for what He has done for us. We don't want to extend forgiveness to the other person, right? It feels like we're letting them off the hook. But really, through the process, we're also unchaining ourselves. Right? We think that we're keeping them where they want them, but really, we're missing the party. Right? We're the ones who are chained up. And we're going to be trapped if we don't do that. And our spirit's going to be sour. And the people around us are going to be affected, as it says in Hebrews, that many other people will be defiled. And will tend to repel other people instead of attract them. And when that's the case, how in the world can we influence people for Christ? So I want to say just for a moment how important this principle is. This principle is something that I feel like that churches, especially, all I have really to go on is America, but we stink at this. And what you see in the New Testament is typically there's one church per community. Okay, and I think it's great that we have all kinds of different churches. Some people are like, it shows such a lack of unity. It should be one. And I'm like, I think it's great. Different churches appeal to different people. That's fantastic. But here's the problem. Here's the drawback with that. The drawback is when you don't have one church, in the New Testament you have one church per community. And if you have a frustration with somebody, or you have a falling out with somebody, and you don't fix it, you're out of church. Like you don't have a church to go to, right? And so you got to fix it. And that causes more maturity, right? That causes people to trust God and to step out and do the things that He's asked us to do relationally. That causes us to flip through the Bible and look at all of one another's and say, well, I guess it's time to forgive one another and to love one another, and it's time to encourage one another. And so it helps us to live out those things that God calls us to, because you don't really have a choice. I mean, it's either like don't go to church or fix it. And in America, we don't do that, right? If we get frustrated with somebody, we just go find another church. We just do something else, right? And that, it's funny because we talk about accountability, and people say, oh, well, I'm accountable to these people, and that kind of thing. But when somebody looks at us and says, hey, I think you might be wrong in this area, or hey, why don't you go talk to that person that is angry with you? Then all of a sudden, we don't want accountability. Right? And then all of a sudden we say, why don't you not stick your nose, where it doesn't belong? Why don't you back out of my world and let me do what I feel like I need to do? Who do you think you are? All of a sudden we push away the people who supposedly we've set up as great accountability. Like we're in community together, or these are people I'm accountable to, and that kind of thing, until they tell me that I need to go fix something. And then I'm upset. Or if somebody hurts us, we just quietly go somewhere else to church and we say, well, I don't want to talk about it. And that's not doing anything to grow your faith. That's not doing anything to grow the kingdom of God. And you're putting yourself in a smaller and smaller prison. I mean, eventually you're going to run out of churches to attend. But here's the thing. Guess what? Every church is made up of imperfect people. And you're imperfect. And maybe you need to write this down, because it's a really deep thought. You take you to every church you go to. I don't know if you know that. But you take you to every church you go to. And that can be a problem, because if you're the type of person who doesn't solve a relational issue in one place, you won't solve a relational issue in the next place. And that's not the future that God has for you. That's not the plan that God has for you. Jesus is glorified. We're set free. We grow in our faith when we reach out to other people and extend forgiveness, especially to people, that when we feel like we've been wrong. The Bible often talks about overlooking the wrong. You don't have to go and verbally say, I forgive you. You can literally just look at something and say, you know what? I forgive that, and I'm going to let that go, and I'm going to move on. Now, there's some signs as to whether or not you actually have done that. If you can even look at them or be in the same room with them, don't tell people, oh, I've already forgiven for that. No, you haven't. It may be that you need to go have a conversation with them. And you may not want to start with, hey, we need to get together so I can forgive you. Because they may not know that they have offended you, so they may take that as an offense. Like, forgive forgive me for what? What have I done against you? So now I'm mad. But you can start with, hey, can we talk about it? It feels like something's happened between us, right? Like we just need to have a conversation. So I'm going to go ahead and ask the band to come back out. But just one of the things that will happen when you worship God for what He's done for you is you're going to become more in tune with the Father's heart. You're going to begin to care about those who are trapped in sin, even if that sin is against you. You're going to begin to see those moments where somebody hurts you as an opportunity to bring somebody back to the Father. And unfortunately, the brother in this story, he doesn't care about the fact that the Father's really excited about the brother's return. He doesn't have the same passion for reclaiming the lost that his father does. He claims that he's the one honoring the Father, but he doesn't have the heart of the Father. And here's what I think is really interesting. Jesus doesn't end this story for the brother. I mean, he ties it up in a nice bow for the prodigal son. He comes to his senses. He comes home. The Father extends forgiveness. He puts a robe on him. He kills the fatted calf and sticks a ring on his finger. And they have a party and they celebrate that he has returned home. But the older brother has a conversation with the Father, and that's it. We don't know. We don't know what he did. I kind of think it's cool that we don't know, because I think it kind of leaves the decision in our lives. It kind of points us to think, well, what would I do? You know, I mean, we don't know what he did, so what would I do? What would I choose to do in that situation? Or what am I choosing to do right now? You think about it, he's got the opportunity to have all the blessings that his Father has provided for him, and also be invited to the party and have a relationship again with his brother. And he's locking himself out of that. He's on the outside looking in. He's missing it. He's withdrawing into a prison that he's made for himself. And Jesus doesn't tell us if he steps out, if he begins to think about all that he has in the Father and thinks about, well, from that position I can go and extend forgiveness to my brother. Like he doesn't tell us if he taps in to all the amazing things that he has at his fingertips in this moment. Again, I think it just shows us, like, what would I do in that situation? And a lot of us are in that situation. It doesn't take a lot to get hurt. In the world we live in today, it's like super easy. All you have to do is log on to Facebook, and you can get offended in 2 seconds. And so like we're offended all the time. But for some of you, like there's somebody like they come to mind, and you actually spend a lot of time thinking about it. They come to mind a lot. And you know that something is not right between you and that person. And you've got a lot of frustration, and you've got a lot of built up anger about it. You've got a lot of bitterness. If someone brings them up, that blood pressure goes up. Listen, you need to make that relationship right. You need to, from your side, do everything you can. You don't need to say, hey, okay, fine, I'll meet them in the middle. If they do what God tells them to do, then I'll do what God tells me to do, and I'll meet them in the middle. No, you need to take the whole trip. And you need to go to them and begin to take steps to make that relationship as right as you can make it from your side. As you focus on the grace and the mercy that God has shown to you. It's the hardest thing you will do in the world, but the freedom that will come from it will change your life. Let's pray. God, help us to really worship. I mean, really worship what you've done for us and who you are. Help us to make that just a constant focus in our hearts and in our lives. That as we begin to absorb that, and we begin to soak that in, and we begin to meditate on your goodness to us and all the riches that we have in Christ, that we can easily come at it from a perspective of, man, why would I hold back forgiveness and love to anybody else? Why would I fall short of grace in this situation?
And so, God, I pray that as you bring people to our minds, that you would help us to have that courage to step out and do the thing that we don't want to do, but the thing that we really need to do. We need to do it for your glory. We need to do it for our good. We need to do it for the benefit of the other person, because of the heart that we should have, like yours, for people who have sinned. And so, God, I pray that this week, relationships would change. That things that have been broken and hurt and hurtful for even some time would begin to be made right. Because we have your heart. Because we love you. Because we are so moved by what you have done for us. That we would understand that so much more has been done for us than has ever been done against us. Help us to live out that truth. Especially this week, I pray in Christ's name. Amen.
I'd like to invite you to stand with us as we close with some worship together this morning. When I'm spent and restless, 1,000 marks I've missed. Your cross says it's finished. Not one sin have I missed. You love me, you always have. You choose me just as I am. You love me, you always have. When lies say you're absent, I feel abandoned. You stir in the stillness. All I know is this. All I know is you love me. You always have, and you choose me just as I am. You love me. You always have. You love me. You always have, and you choose me just as I am. You love me. You always have. You never stop. You never stop chasing. You never stop. You never stop wanting me. Never stop. You never stop calling my name. I'll never know how much you never stop. You never stop chasing me. Never stop. You never stop wanting me. Never stop. You never stop calling my name. I'll never know how much you love me. You always have, and you choose me just as I am. You love me. You always have. You love me. You always have, and you choose me just as I am. You love me. You always have. You love me. You always have. I've been broken within a moment. I've been faithful and I've been reckless at every bend. I've held everything together, watched it shatter. I've stood tall and I have crumbled in the same breath. I have wrestled and I have trembled toward surrender. There's my heart adrift and drifted home again. Plundered blessing till I've been desperate to find redemption. Every time I turn around, Lord, you're still there. And I was found before I was lost. I was yours before I was not. There's grace to spare for all my mistakes, and that part just wrecks me. And I know why I don't deserve this kind of love, but somehow this kind of love is who you are. It's a grace I could never add to be somebody you still want, but somehow you love me as you find me. You love me as you find me. Your glory needs my praises. If this borrowed breath is yours, Lord, take it all. You are faithful and you are gracious, and I'm just grateful to think you don't need a single thing, but still you want my heart. And I was found before I was lost, and I was yours before I was not. You wear the scars of all my mistakes, and that part just wrecks me. And I know don't deserve this kind of love, but somehow this kind of love is who you are. It's a grace I could never add to be somebody you still want, but somehow you love me as you find me. You love me as you find. Sing if you want my heart. You want my heart. I won't second guess, 'cause I need your love more than anything. I'm in, I'm yours. Your love's too good to leave me here. Your love's too good to leave me. don't deserve this kind of love, but somehow this kind of love is who you are. It's a grace I could never add to be somebody you still want, but somehow you love me as you find me. You love me as you find me. God, we thank you this morning that is true, that you love us just the way we are, but you love us too much to leave us there. God, we pray this morning for your breakthrough miracle power to change lives of the people in this room, of the people in this community. We just pray that we would get to be a part of that, and for some of us that first step may be forgiveness, and true worship, and true acknowledgement of who you are and what you have done for us, imperfect, sinful people. You still love us right where we are, right who we are. So we're thankful for that this morning. And so we just pray that as we leave from this place, that we would be more like you. We would be more like Jesus. We would be more forgiving. We would be more humble. We would be more loving and graceful to those who need it the most, to those that we feel like don't deserve it. So we just pray for the courage, the strength, the ability to be able to do that in your name, because we know as people that is not normal. That is not something that we can do on our own. So we just pray that you would give us the ability to do that, to make that journey, to go the full distance without any expectations other than that you'll meet us there. So we just pray, God, that you would do that for all of us, that we would be a people in a church that crosses that distance to meet people where they are. We thank you that you've given us the opportunity this morning just to worship. We just pray that it would carry on with us the rest of this week. God, that we would be reminded of your goodness, your love for us, so that we can give that to others. That we love you and we thank you for this time with you this morning. It's in Jesus' name that we pray these things. Amen.
You know, we all struggle with something. Most of us struggle with multiple things. If bitterness is one of the things that you are currently struggling with, I encourage you to take those next steps that Jim mentioned. Have a conversation with the Father. Focus on the worship. Focus on the good in your life. Focus on what God's done for you and extend forgiveness. If you don't feel that you struggle with bitterness, ask for God to reveal that. Ask him to reveal any bitterness that might be hiding in your life. Ask him to give you the ability to extend forgiveness, to give the grace that you've been given through Christ. I also encourage you to pick up your connection card. Take that home. If you don't have something that you want to write down today, take it home and pray over it. Ask God to reveal what you need to break through in your life. What do you need to break out from? Fill that out. Bring it back for us so that we can help you pray over that. Thank you so much for spending your Sunday with us. You're dismissed.